So I got done watching Campbell Hatton versus James Flint. The rematch. Was it repeat? Was it revenge? It was a repeat. Campbell Hatton loses a unanimous decision over 10 rounds to James Flint yet again. And, you know, Hatton is only, he's in his early 20s, about 23 years of age. He turned pro on the undercard of Dylan White versus Povetkin in Gibraltar. And I remember looking at him on the undercard thinking, whoa, this guy is very raw, like extremely raw. I remember interviews Ricky Hatton gave prior to him turning pro saying that the reason they were turning pro was because at the time amateur bouts were pretty much halted because boxing was really primarily being done behind closed doors, certainly in most European countries. They were able to get an attendance in Gibraltar. Now, for me, that kind of sounded a bit strange because, one, I think Campbell Hatton was again only 20 years old at the time, so he was very young. So he had plenty of time to wait around, and as well as that, he wouldn't have had to wait around that long because the time he was saying that, that was when everything started reopening. So I was kind of looking at that like, well, that doesn't make the greatest amount of sense, He might only have to wait another 4 or 5 months before he can get the amateur career, quote unquote, back in business. And he's only 20 years old, so like that's nothing. That's plenty of time you could be in the gym, you could be doing things. So I kind of didn't understand Ricky Hatton's rationale over why Campbell Hatton was turning pro and stuff like that. Because when I looked at him, I thought this kid needs a lot more schooling, an absolutely massive amount of schooling. He was trained at the time by his uncle Matthew, so it was all kind of in the family. Matthew Hatton's been a trainer for a while. He's not a bad trainer. So I remember looking at him on that show. I forget who he fought. He won his first couple of fights on points. And I just thought, okay, nepotism in its finest in the nicest way. That you've Campbell Hatton here, the son of Ricky Hatton, the legend, a fan favourite, all that good stuff. And I think more so Sky, because it was Sky at the time who were the broadcaster. They were really, the Ricky Hatton, Campbell Hatton, Ricky Hatton. Eddie Hearn was pushing it as well. But you notice when Eddie Hearn went and he moved to the zone, he started correctly, by the way, putting Campbell Hatton on some of the more smaller kind of, I don't want to say miscellaneous cards, but not on because he was fighting on pay-per-view cards. I think he fought on Joseph Parker versus Chisora. He fought on AJ's undercard against Usyk at Tottenham Stadium. So, a lot of pressure, even though it's early on in the night, but a lot of pressure on a young kid who has no experience as an amateur, really. So Eddie Hearn was bringing him along correctly. The only problem was I was noticing no improvements. When someone turns over and you can tell they don't really have a talent, they've not got a natural aptitude for boxing, you could improve it, and if you stay dedicated, you can certainly improve. And Campbell Hatton is very fortunate in a sense that he doesn't need to work. He doesn't need a day job or anything like that, so he can primarily just focus on boxing 100% of the time. So you will, in theory, see some improvements. You didn't see any of that with Campbell Hatton. Excuse me. You didn't see any of that with Campbell Hatton. And it's hard to get any worse, but he didn't get any better. It was just a stagnant Campbell Hatton. The punching power is not really there. The defense is very poor. And if you have a poor defense like Campbell Hatton does, certainly at that level, what's going to be happening in the gym? Are you going to be taking beatings in the gym because you could be fighting guys of a much higher level? Or are you actually sparring at all and getting some ring craft in the gym because your uncle/trainer is maybe worried about you taking too much punishment in the gym? I always theorise that might be one of the reasons why we didn't see that much improvement, because in sparring, he probably wasn't, if he wasn't sparring at all, it was probably very extremely light sparring. Now, you don't want to go and have anyone really go and knock lumps out of one another and sparring repeatedly, no, but having a reasonable technical spar, that's how you're going to develop, that's how you're going to learn. And I've always theorised that maybe Campbell Hatton doesn't really get that or hasn't had that. Anyway, I'm talking so much about the kind of career to this point of Campbell Hatton, but he ran into James Flint a couple of months ago, about 6-7 months ago, and he lost that fight comprehensively, I felt. In this fight, he comes in with a new trainer, Ben Davison. Seems like everyone goes to Ben Davison nowadays, but Ben Davison is a good trainer, and I did, in fairness, notice a couple of little improvements there in Campbell Hatton. I genuinely did. Now, early on, the fight was nip and tuck. It was, oh, by the way, this was a good fight. This was the co-main. Now, some people are going to say, why was this the co-main? Yeah, I don't know the ins and outs. Apparently, there was some sort of kidney infection from Michael Gomez. So him and Reece Bellotti was pulled literally like on the day. So that would have been a great fight. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see that. But this fight was pretty good. Early on, Campbell Hatton was doing all right. It was nip and tuck. It was ebbing and flowing. But as the fight went on down the stretch, James Flint again, he really started to take over. He started to put his punches together a lot better. He started to land a lot more on Campbell Hatton, just outwork him really. And he took a foothold in this fight, and ultimately it was enough to see him victorious, and the right man definitely won. What does this mean now, moving forward, for Campbell Hatton? I don't want to sound too harsh and say stick a fork in him. I don't want to say it like that. I don't want to say it like that because he's still young. Yes, he's got back-to-back losses, but if they can improve him, I've always said that what they should have done with Campbell Hatton from the offset is Eddie Hearn should just loan him out to small hall promoters, have him fight 6-8 rounders at the York Hall, at the Brentwood Centre, on some of these smaller, small-time promoters' shows against, undescript opposition, because he needs to learn it. And he needs to be away from the cameras, he needs to be away from the spotlight, he needs to be away from, essentially, the scrutiny. Because that will help him develop. He should do that, I think, because he's still young enough. He should do that for a good 2 years. I think he should do it for a good 2 years, work with Ben Davison, go and try and actually get into some of these camps for sparring. So if the opportunity, you're, 140 pounds. If the opportunity comes to spar, even in the camps, or even don't even need to spar with them, participate in some of the camps of some of these, elite fighters, I'm not saying this will happen, but, if you got invited to go to one of Devin Haney's camps or something like that, not to spar him, obviously not, but, just to see how it's done there, I think that could all help Campbell Hatton massively. Having said that, I think his ceiling, this was area level, and area level is no disrespect, particularly low level, and if you're struggling at that, with improvement, you might get to English/British level. But I think that is at a very, very big push, the level Campbell Hatton will get to, if he decides to carry on. Because boxing is a dangerous sport, we know that. It's a tough sport. The kid does get a lot of stick, but at the end of the day, Campbell Hatton could have picked an easier profession to go into. And this is a kid who doesn't need to box. He never needed to. Could have picked a much easier profession to go into. Chose boxing, which is, in my opinion, the hardest. It's the hardest sport to do. Physically and mentally, it's the hardest. So I give him all the credit in the world for that. Maybe he should look what Tommy Fury is doing. At the end of the day, Tommy Fury is another example of nepotism, simple as. Tommy Fury has next to no ability. He is honestly, Tommy Fury is awful. He kind of knows that, I think. And now he's just gone down the Misfits road, making good money. You got to bear in mind, Tommy Fury, for one of his fights in the States back in 2021, I think he was paid something like 10 grand. 10 grand for a 4-rounder. And I think he certainly would have made high 6 figures, if not 7 figures, fighting Jake Paul. Night and day. So, yeah, I think maybe that might be the road to go down for Campbell Hatton, to genuinely just look at the Misfits. You bring your... And I think in that atmosphere, Campbell Hatton would feel a bit less pressure, and it'd be a bit more of a party-like atmosphere. So maybe you could get the old Ricky Hatton chants and stuff like that going. I think the people who are into Misfits are not necessarily the people who are going to be scrutinising, undercards of, Matchroom and Queensbury, if you know what I mean, stuff like that. I doubt that he'll get any real stick from anyone for those shows, because at the end of the day, he'll probably look technically better than most of them, to be honest, which is some of them are absolutely god-awful. God knows how much they're getting paid for it, because, Jesus Christ, seriously. Remember Wings and Boogie? That was a spectacle, if ever I've seen one. But yeah, I think that might be an option for Campbell Hatton moving forward. But let me know your thoughts. These are just my thoughts on it. Let me know yours in the comment section below. I'll leave it there. Hope you enjoyed it, people. Smash the like button if you could. And subscribe, of course, as always, if you haven't already.